I made two mistakes when skim coating this narrow wall and will share them so you can avoid the same mistakes. This was a practice session to cover this ugly knockdown texture with a smooth skim coat. First, I placed a 120 grit sanding screen on my 9-inch round vacuum sander and attached it to my shop vac that was outfitted with a HEPA filter and bag filter. Then I got to sanding. The wall had a glossy finish, so I decided to scuff sand and prime the wall before skim coating. For the inside corner, I used my rectangle vacuum pole sander. Finally, I used my vacuum sponge sander at the ceiling to avoid damaging the ceiling that I had already prepped and primed. Next, I cut in the wall perimeter, rolled the wall with primer, and let it dry overnight. The following day, I pulled out a bucket of all-purpose joint compound that I thinned with water to a yogurt-like consistency. And with my 3/4 inch nap roller cover, rolled the joint compound on the wall. Then I grabbed my 12-inch taping knife that has a slight curve and tried my best to keep the lettering toward the wall to keep the knife edges flared away from the wall. I watched a lot of skim coating videos, and kudos to those experts because skim coating is not as easy as they make it look. The only experience I had before this was practicing in the 3 closets. The skim coat looks okay, but close-ups show that the middle area is thin. That's where I ended up my up and down strokes. And here's a look at lots of knife and lift marks that will be covered with the second coat. After drying overnight, here's another look at some lift marks, voids, and a knife mark. I use a 6-inch putty knife to knock down the knife marks and other high spots. This second coat was rolled on much thicker, which wasn't the best idea. I also tried to lessen the knife pressure at the end of the strokes to avoid thinning the coat out at the middle of the wall like in the first coat. The second coat looks good, except for one knife mark and lots of tiny bubbles. A quick search noted that the bubbles were probably a result of poor mixing or the coat was too thick. The poor mixing probably wasn't it because I skim coated this small area on the same day with the same mix. So the tiny bubbles were most likely caused by the coat being too thick. That was mistake number 1. The next day, the knife mark and tiny bubbles were scraped with a putty knife. And the bubbles were then patched over. Looking back, patching the wall was mistake number 2. I should have just skim-coated the wall with a very light coat. Here are some patch marks. I use a 240 grit sanding screen on the vacuum sander, followed by sponge sanding, which took care of all the imperfections. Remember, I'm just a beginner.